A scream pierced the quiet afternoon of April 27th, 1993. Tracy, a young girl fishing with her father at a secluded pond in LaPorte, Indiana, froze in disbelief. Floating toward her was a lone shoe. Curious, she leaned closer, and then her stomach dropped. The shoe was attached to a body weighed down by heavy logs beneath the murky water. Police rushed to the scene, and when they pulled the body from the pond, two rings still clung stubbornly to its left hand, one engraved with Matt Elsa, the other Reina Ryzen. There was no doubt it was Reina Ryzen, the 16-year-old who had vanished exactly 1 month earlier. In an instant, the quiet illusion of safety in LaPorte vanished. Any faint hope that she had simply run away evaporated with that grim confirmation. The smell of coffee intertwined with freshly baked bread from the local cafes. The sound of children playing in the streets. The clatter of bicycles until the streetlights blinked on. While the parents watched with the easy trust of those who lived side by side, doors remained unlocked, and neighbors were like family. It was a sanctuary, a bubble of safety so complete that even the thought of a murder seemed like some sort of ghost story from a far-off past, from history books long before notorious killers like Belganess made the headlines. And though 25,000 murders darkened the United States that year, LaPorte continued to bask in its illusion of security. In this tranquil bubble lived Reina Ryzen, born May 6, 1976, to Ben and Karen. She was a young woman who attacked life with a joyful intensity. At 16, she was a high school sophomore in LaPorte High, doing excellently both academically and artistically. Music was more than a hobby. Her cornet, flute, and oboe were extensions of her vibrant personality, filling the crisp Indiana air with melody as she marched with the school band. While most teenagers struggled to juggle one job, Reina managed three, each a deliberate step toward her dream of becoming a veterinarian. Her favorite was at Pine Lake Animal Hospital, affectionately called the Clinic, where she cleaned kennels, fed hungry animals, and walked patients, already envisioning the soft fur of the future animals in her care. Friday, March the 26th, 1993, was a bright and promising day. It was otherwise just another spring day, but beneath the ordinary rhythm lay an unseen precipice. Reina hurried through her final classes, her mind buzzing with a different kind of excitement. She was to go on a dinner date with Matt Elsa, her on-again, off-again boyfriend since 6th grade. Their relationship had its ups and downs, but at that moment, they were solidly back together. Matt was a fellow sophomore, moderately popular, yet a reassuring constant in her usually chaotic life. Reina envisioned the reassuring sequence of events to come: home for a change of clothes, then the drive across town to the clinic for her 4 to 6 p.m. shift, after which Matt would show up. She quickly dressed in worn-in blue jeans, black shoes, and a sweatshirt. Over this, she donned Matt's black leather Letterman jacket with the name Elsa stitched across the shoulders in bold letters, a warm, palpable reminder of their relationship. The Letterman jacket was more than clothes. It was a symbol of their rekindled connection. Reina slipped it on, feeling its familiar weight, comforting yet bold, a quiet statement to the world. One last glance in the mirror, keys in hand, heart thrumming with youthful excitement, and she stepped out the door. Her tan Ford LTD purred to life, rolling away from the Ryzen home, taillights fading into the calm afternoon, carrying Reina toward her dreams and a fate which no one in LaPorte could have imagined. As night started to fall on LaPorte on Friday, the ordinary beats of life began to come apart for the Ryzen family. Matt Elsa showed up at Reina's door around 7 p.m., his heart racing with anticipation, expecting that usual bright smile. Instead, he found Ben Ryerson's kind but worried expression. "She's not here, Matt," said Ben, confusion tinting his voice. "We thought she'd be back from the clinic by now. Come on in. Wait a bit." The minutes ticked into 1 hour. The easy conversation in the sitting room thinned, replaced by a palpable unease. Matt, unable to ignore the rising knot of worry in his stomach, tried calling the clinic again, but received only silence on the other end. Where could she be? Driving to the animal hospital, his anxiety mounting with every turn of the wheel, he found Reina's tan Ford LTD gone. The building was dark, locked, a chilling void where her vibrant presence should have been returning home. The air inside felt heavy, almost suffocating. Ben and Karen exchanged a look that said it all. Reina was reliable, meticulous, predictable. She never changed plans without warning, especially not for a date she'd anticipated all week. She just isn't like this, Ben said, his voice tight, as he phoned Reina's older sister Lori, nearly 10 years his senior and living across town with her husband Ray McCarty. Reina sometimes spent time with them, but Lori confirmed she hadn't seen or heard from her. About 10 p.m., Reina's younger sister Wendy came home from the movies. The heaviness was almost physical in the air, like a silent weight bearing down and holding its breath. Ben and Wendy made the torturous drive to the LaPorte County Sheriff's Office, where they were met at the counter with a shrug by a deputy leaning back in his chair. 16-year-olds change their minds, he said. She probably went off with friends. Come back after 24 hours to file an official report. But for Ben, Karen, and Matt, each passing second stretched into an eternity of terror. Saturday morning, March 27th, had finally dawned over LaPorte, and it offered no comfort. Reina's car was still nowhere to be found, nor was she in her bed, cold and unoccupied, the very picture of absence. In desperation, round after round of calls were made by the frantic parents to everybody they knew. The community, a tightly knit network of trust and care, vowed great concern, a search party, evidence of Reina's brightness and the love she had inspired among friends, family, and marching band members, started off rapidly. Youthful energy was now focused, determined, grim. Volunteers across town carpooled, handing out flyers emblazoned with Reina's smiling face, each one a silent plea. As the police watched, the town mobilized and they could no longer remain detached. They issued a public appeal, asking anyone with information about Reina's whereabouts to come forward. It soon yielded the first leads. Two independent calls were remarkably similar in their description of a tan Ford LTD in the clinic parking lot around 6 p.m., two men sitting in the front seats, and a girl matching Reina's description standing outside. The girl seemed to be having what looked like a quarrel with one of the men, according to the witnesses. The police were logical and methodical, focusing first on Matt since he had admitted to checking on Reina at the clinic. He was brought in for questioning and repeated his story. He had gone to the clinic, but there was no sign of Reina or her car. The place was dark, locked. For now, there was no reason to doubt his genuine distress. The next day, a chilling new detail emerged. A tipster reported seeing a tan Ford LTD, Reina's car, parked along a secluded stretch of County Road 209, miles northeast of the animal hospital. Deputy Timothy Shaw was dispatched. What he found confirmed the dread that had been growing in the town's heart. Reina's car sat unlocked, keys still in the ignition. The driver's side door was ajar, as if someone had left in a hurry. Her purse lay on the passenger seat, its contents scattered across the floor, the glove box open. A small but unsettling clue, a broken hair clip, lay on the ground outside the car. The hood was popped, suggesting a breakdown, but police knew Reina would never leave her purse behind. If she'd walked for help, this isn't just a breakdown, Deputy Shaw muttered to himself, scanning the empty, fog-shrouded stretch of road. This is staged. When officers popped open the hood, they found nothing wrong. The engine purred to life without a hitch. Later, a mechanic confirmed that the car was in perfect working order. Someone had deliberately made it look as though Reina's car had broken down. But beyond that, there were no easy answers. No signs of a struggle, no shattered glass, no DNA evidence. A search of the dense surrounding foliage turned up nothing. Reina's parents were baffled. She would never take that road, Karen insisted, especially not on a foggy night, not when she was so excited to see Matt. Every puzzle piece refused to fit. Evidence technician Larry Mitchell carefully combed the car, looking for any trace of violence but found none. No blood, no DNA, no physical signs of foul play. One detail, though, did puzzle him: wet foliage and newspapers on the passenger floor, as if a damp towel had been placed there. Strange, since it hadn't rained that night. The silence inside the car was deafening, an unsettling layer to an already confounding mystery. Then a small glint caught an officer's eye in the open glove box, a school signet ring. For a moment, investigators felt a fragile spark of hope. Perhaps it was Matt's. An ordinary explanation to counter the grimness of the scene, but Matt quickly dispelled that. His own ring bore his name engraved clearly on the inside. This was not his. He hesitated, then said maybe it belonged to Jason Tibbs, a boy Reina had dated back in middle school. The name echoed faintly through LaPorte's collective memory, a short chapter in Reina's life that had dragged on a little too long. She was long past him, but he hadn't let go. Matt had always felt secure in his relationship with Reina, despite Jason's consistent and often inappropriate attempts to win her back. Jason, a high school dropout with a minor criminal record, had bombarded Reina with letters and pleas to leave Matt. Reina treasured Matt's steady devotion and had always rebuffed him gently but firmly, seeing Jason only as a relic of childhood, occasionally tolerated as a friend, sometimes visiting the clinic for company. Now, seeing his ring in Reina's glove box added a fresh, chilling layer of concern to Matt's growing dread. Detectives tracked down Jason Tibbs. He was cooperative, maybe a little too cooperative. He explained the ring's presence with a plausible, if slightly odd story. He had been helping Reina with her car radio, and the ring in the way had been put in the glove box for safekeeping. He even boasted about being one of the first volunteers in the search, driving around county roads with one of Reina's bandmates the day after she vanished. Still, the detectives had questions. Where had Jason been the night Reina disappeared? Jason had an alibi. He said that from 6 p.m. to 9:30 p.m., he had been tutoring two younger girls, Jamie and Misty, in mathematics and science at a mobile home park on Fail Road. Later, his friend Chad picked him up to go fox hunting, a car-based chase game popular with local youth. Jason said this continued until midnight, when another friend, Scott, drove him out to watch TV and play darts, until 3 a.m., when he returned home to his parents. Surprisingly, Jamie and Misty corroborated the tutoring story. Chad at first denied picking him up and later changed his story, saying Jason had told him to lie. Police chalked it up to unreliability or fear and didn't press further. Other fox hunting participants recalled hearing Jason's voice on the radio, and Scott confirmed picking him up on paper. Jason's alibi held. Yet detectives couldn't shake a nagging unease. A high school dropout known for petty crime, claiming to tutor advanced subjects, and the location he gave, Fail Road, was disturbingly close to where Reina's car was found. His story felt too neat, too rehearsed, yet peppered with small, troubling inconsistencies. The investigative net widened. Cheryl, a co-worker of Reina's at the clinic, said she had left early that Friday and left Reina alone. The word echoed through LaPorte's tense air. An anonymous phone call confirmed earlier sightings. Another caller said a girl resembling Reina was arguing with two men outside the clinic around 6 p.m. Various possibilities now occurred to detectives. Who were these men? Had they followed her, or were they someone she knew, someone capable of harming her? Matt and Jason were briefly considered by the investigators, but they soon dismissed the suggestion that the two could have been together in the same car, as they were rivals, not friends. The police began to narrow their suspect list by administering polygraph tests to Matt and Jason, along with a third unnamed individual. Matt and Jason passed, while the third person showed clear signs of deception. The detectives, tight-lipped, refused to reveal the person's identity, but a new and chilling question began to take hold in LaPorte. Who was this person and what were they hiding? 6 days faded into a long week of misery. Each passing hour diminished the hope that clung so desperately to the hearts of the town. The sun, once comforting, now seemed to mock the Rysons, its heat no longer capable of melting the cold dread that held their home tight. Ben and Karen sat by the phone, faces creased by sleepless concern, waiting for that call that never came. The community, desperate for answers, felt that fear spread outward, a palpable anxiety infecting every corner of town. This was no longer only about finding Reina. It was about understanding the monstrous act that had shattered their illusion of safety. With no major breakthroughs, police issued a new public appeal. "We have no major developments," Chief Gene Samuelson announced, standing beside Captain John Miller, both wearing grim expressions. Meanwhile, the Rysons, aided by generous anonymous donors, had raised a $6,000 reward for any information. The Indiana State Police launched a helicopter, its rotors chopping mournfully through the sky. a mechanical bird searching for a lost girl. Even America's Most Wanted ran a segment on Reina's disappearance, pushing her bright, smiling face into homes across the nation. Then a new voice cut through the despair. An anonymous caller, prompted by the national broadcast, directed police to Fail Road, a winding county road about 6 miles south of where Reina's car had been found. Officers raced to the location, hearts pounding with grim hope. There, hanging from a low branch on a lonely tree, roughly 20 feet from the road, was a black leather jacket. Recognition jolted the officers. Across the shoulders, stitched boldly, was the name Elsa, the Letterman jacket Matt had given Reina, a comforting symbol of their rekindled love. Now discarded like a forgotten secret state, troopers confirmed it had not been there the day before. Someone had intentionally placed it, or perhaps thrown it from a passing car. This wasn't just a clue, it was a defiant message, a chilling piece of Reina's story left for the world to find. The revelation deepened the mystery further, sending the investigation into new, unsettling directions. A subsequent press conference saw the reward pool grow further. A local bakery added $5,000, and Charlie Finley, former owner of the Oakland Athletics, contributed a staggering $25,000. The total, $36,000, stood as a desperate beacon, the town's collective plea for any scrap of truth. A month passed. The porch light at the Rysons' home continued its lonely vigil, a single unwavering flame against the encroaching darkness. "She'll come home," Ben and Karen whispered each night, voices thin with exhaustion. "She has to." Another America's Most Wanted segment aired, hauntingly retelling Reina's vanishing, yet still the phone remained silent. Then on April 27, 1993, 32 days after Reina vanished, LaPorte was plunged into new, unimaginable horror. A man and his 14-year-old daughter, Tracy, were fishing at a quiet pond just off Range Road, 2 miles outside town. Bored with her line, Tracy wandered along the reedy edge of the water. Her eyes caught something dark, partially submerged. At first, she thought it was a turtle. Curiosity turned to sheer terror as she drew closer. It was a shoe, attached to a foot, attached to a body. 2 logs, heavy and deliberate, were stacked on its back, holding it beneath the surface. Frozen, Tracy stumbled backward. "Daddy," she whispered, trembling, "there's a person in the water." The dive team members came, their faces grim, reflected in the dark water. Carefully, they retrieved the body, putting it onto a stretcher amid air, heavy with unspoken grief. The woman, fully clothed in blue jeans and a sweatshirt, which was consistent with Reina's description, had 2 rings on her left hand that glittered dull light. One engraved Matt Elsa, and the other Reina Ryzen. There was no room for doubt anymore. It was Reina. Dental records and the autopsy would later confirm the devastating fact, but the community already knew. The bright, ambitious girl who had dreamed of becoming a veterinarian had been murdered. Her body, discovered in the murky depths of a pond on Range Road, would forever shatter LaPorte's illusion of safety. The official confirmation came with agonizing certainty, plunging the town into a grief so deep it seemed almost physical, a shared wound no one could ignore. LaPorte was consumed by a collective grief and fear it had never known. The veneer of safety had shattered. Reina Ryzen, the effervescent girl who had become a sort of embodiment of the town's quiet hopes, wasn't just missing anymore. She was gone, brutally murdered. The autopsy showed the grim reality of her final moments: asphyxiation. She had been strangled barehanded, a desperate and intimate act of violence. There were no other overt injuries to her body, but investigators theorized she may have been struck or made unconscious before her breath was taken. "This wasn't random," one detective said, turning to Captain Miller, his tone thick with both sadness and anger. This was personal, passionate. For a town that had rarely seen a homicide, LaPorte struggled to comprehend who among them could commit such a monstrous act. Against a girl universally liked, focused on building her future, a girl whose bright energy had touched so many lives. For Ben and Karen, Reina's parents, the world had fractured. Hundreds attended her funeral at Rolling Prairie United Methodist Church on May 1st, a sea of solemn-faced people whose sorrow was a palpable hum beneath the heavy organ music. There were plainclothes officers who moved unobtrusively among mourners, eyes scanning faces for that flicker of suspicious behavior that might give the killer away. They knew it wasn't a stranger, but someone Reina knew, someone she might have trusted enough to follow to the secluded place where her car would later be found. 6 weeks after Reina's disappearance, when the raw edges of grief had begun to harden into a dull ache, a whisper reached the police, then a louder murmur. It was about Ray McCarthy, Lori's husband and Reina's own brother-in-law. He eventually pleaded guilty to a Class D felony of child molestation, receiving a 3-year suspended sentence and a requirement to complete counseling. But he never attended the sessions. Despite this, Lori, through a complex and painful mixture of loyalty, fear, or forgiveness, remained married to him, saying they were working on their marriage. Reina's parents, in their own conflicted way, had also extended him forgiveness for the past. Initially, police had questioned all family members when Reina first disappeared. Both Ray and Lori gave statements claiming they hadn't seen Reina that night. But as the investigation deepened, Ray's story began to shift. He later claimed he was in South Bend, a neighboring city, at a pig farm collecting money, a route which eerily placed him near the area where Reina's body would eventually be discovered. This change of alibi, given even before her body was found, immediately raised police suspicions. Those suspicions hardened into near certainty after the horrific discovery at the pond. To investigators, the road seemed clear. Ray McCarthy, with his history of calculated cruelty, his shifting stories, and the dark stain of his past, was the prime suspect. He had become a terrifying embodiment of the evil next door that LaPorte once thought impossible. On May 7th, investigators focused on Ray. They secured a search warrant for his and Lori's house. Both of their cars were impounded, their metal shells holding secrets forensic teams hoped to uncover. Inside the home, police found a small arsenal, a .44 Magnum revolver, 2 other firearms, and a stun gun. The discovery only deepened the dark portrait of McCarthy forming in the detectives' minds. 4 days later, on May 11th, still awaiting forensic results, Ray did the unexpected. He voluntarily appeared at the LaPorte County Sheriff's Office, not to confess, but to change his alibi for a third time. He said that on the evening of March 26th, he had looked at a house for sale on Warren Street between 5:40 and 5:45 p.m., a detail that would eventually be confirmed by a witness. From that vantage point, the Pine Lake Animal Hospital came into view, as did Reina's familiar tan Ford LTD parked outside. According to Ray, it was just a quick check-in. Inside the clinic, Reina was sweeping or mopping the foyer. When asked about Lori, she said she didn't know and told him to leave because she was getting ready to go on a date. The exchange was brief and measured, and detectives left with more questions than answers. The encounter inside the clinic had lasted no more than 30 seconds before McCarthy left. Why he had withheld such a crucial detail for so long remained a mystery. His explanation unraveled as a convoluted tale of marital strife. After that evening, he claimed he had picked up a female hitchhiker, driven her across state lines, and spent the night at a motel, all in a calculated effort to conceal his infidelity from Lori amid their so-called trust issues. The story reeked of deception, flimsy in its attempt to excuse inconsistencies, while offering no real account of his actions on the night Reina vanished. In a police interview, the usually loyal Lori had let slip one alarming detail. After Reina disappeared, Ray had asked her to vacuum the back of his car. The statement was quickly recanted, but the seed of doubt had been planted. When the lab reports finally came back on the impounded cars, they offered no definitive answers. There was no DNA evidence, no blood tying Ray to Reina's case. Some animal blood, likely from his hunting activities, was found in the back of his car, but it bore no conclusive link to the murder. While McCarthy remained the primary person of interest, the physical evidence connecting him to Reina's death was stubbornly absent. Despite the intensity of the investigation and the mounting suspicion, the case started to go cold. More than a year passed, the file gathering dust, Reina's ghost seeming to fade further into the agonizing silence. Then, in November 1994, more than a year after Reina's murder, a strange new chapter opened. Indiana State Police pulled over a nondescript van and found inside Larry Hall a man serving time for an unrelated attempted kidnapping. Already under surveillance by multiple jurisdictions, Hall was known to travel across the Midwest for Civil War reenactments, an unsettling itinerary that left a trail of missing women in its wake. He was already a suspect in two attempted abductions in Illinois and the murder of Jessica Roach, whose body had been found just across the state line in Indiana. Inside Hall's van was a macabre collection, many newspaper clippings detailing disappearances and murders of young women, some explicitly about Reina Ryzen. Then the chilling discovery, a prescription birth control pill bottle with the meticulous label to R. Ryerson. When questioned, Hall answered with a completely detached, almost casual demeanor and started to confess to killing Reina. "I've killed so many women," he said, with no inflection in his voice. "I can't keep track of them all." Yet just as casually, he recanted. This would happen several times. To the investigators, now desperate and grasping in the dark, Larry Hall offered a terrifying yet plausible alternative. Could the monster really be a stranger, a transient evil that had swept through their unsuspecting town? The confession sent a ripple of terror and, curiously, a flicker of hope through LaPorte. Was it possible that Reina's killer wasn't someone they knew? Investigators, temporarily seduced by Hall's claimed reign of terror, plunged deep into his dark world. They mapped his travels throughout the Midwest for Civil War reenactments, compiling a gruesome tapestry of missing and murdered young women. Reina, with her dynamic youth, fit his typical victim profile. For the time being, the narrative surrounding Ray McCarthy, the familiar, unsettling figure, receded, eclipsed by the chilling specter of a serial predator. Yet one nagging inconsistency tugged at investigators. Despite Hall's bragging, they could not put him in LaPorte on March 26, 1993. Reina's case was different. No evidence existed of the sexual abuse or mutilation that hallmarked Hall's other brutal crimes. The birth control pill bottle, chillingly personalized with R. Ryerson, was ultimately exposed as a grotesque fantasy, a label Hall had meticulously created to revel in notoriety. His claims about Reina remained unverified, a chilling wish more than a confession. Ultimately, Larry Hall confessed to the murder of Jessica Roach and the abduction and murder of 3 other women, sealing his fate with a life sentence without parole in June 1995. He was widely believed to have killed dozens more, perhaps 30 to 40. But Reina Ryzen was not among those he could be definitively linked to. This brief, unsettling detour into Hall's monstrous world provided no answers for Reina. The closed case of Hall turned the focus back to LaPorte, where her murder was still an open wound, an unresolved nightmare for both the town and her family. The investigators were back at square one, looking at the cold files of Reina Ryzen, the pages reflecting nothing other than frustrating emptiness. The focus inevitably and grimly returned to Ray McCarthy. 5 long years had passed since the murder of Reina, each a testament to the slow, relentless grind of an investigation devoid of easy answers. Detectives now felt they had circumstantial evidence, painstakingly pieced together, worthy of taking before a grand jury. The weight of his shifting alibis, the deceptive polygraph results, and the haunting shadow of his past abuse seemed inarguable. The grand jury agreed, indicting McCarthy in a unanimous vote. He was taken into custody and formally charged with the murder of Reina Ryzen. The news sent shockwaves through the community, confirming some people's worst fears, while others still couldn't believe it. McCarthy faced the ultimate consequence with a not guilty plea and was put in jail to await his trial. He spent 15 torturous months in jail. In that period, a new prosecutor arrived at LaPorte County, Robert Beckman, who was not encumbered with years of frustration and raw emotion. Beckman carefully sifted through the pile of evidence and came to the sobering conclusion that there was insufficient basis for the indictment. No definitive physical evidence, no smoking gun. In 1999, much to the surprise of many, Ray McCarthy was let out of jail. Karen Ryerson, while her heart ached for justice, publicly defended him. "We believe him," she told a local reporter, her voice firm despite a certain underlying tremor of pain. She and her family clung in one of those complicated, painful acts of loyalty, or maybe of denial to the belief that the true monster was still out there, and Ray wasn't it. It was a crushing blow to the Ryerson family. The initial shock of McCarthy's release gave way to weary acceptance, but not surrender. The case once again went cold, receding into the records room, another unsolved mystery in a town that had hoped to finally lay its ghost to rest. Years bled into over a decade. The silence grew heavier. But to Ben and Karen, to Lori and Wendy too, Reina wouldn't be forgotten. The dreams she had, the bright laughter, how much she wanted to heal animals, these things fed a quiet, unyielding fire, a promise to keep her story alive, even while the world marched on. They refused to let Reina Ryzen fade into obscurity. For 15 agonizing years, Reina's case remained a ghost in the annals of LaPorte, a cold file gathering dust, a wound that refused to heal. To her family, the porch light at the Ryerson home burning each night was a defiant beacon against the decades of darkness, a silent, stubborn vow. Ben and Karen, their hair now flecked with gray, continued to share Reina's story with anyone who would listen, so her memory didn't fade into the background noise of time. They knew, with a certainty that transcended evidence, that somewhere the truth still breathed. Then in May 2008, a telephone call cut through the silence of those forgotten years. Corrections Officer Martinez was performing a routine check at an Indiana correctional facility when he noted one peculiar request of Ricky Hammonds, an inmate serving time for a different murder. Hammonds didn't want any deals. "It's about the LaPorte girl, Reina Ryzen," he said. Martinez immediately flagged the call for the Indiana State Police. The notification went to Detectives Al Williamson of the Indiana State Police and Brett Airy of the LaPorte County Sheriff's Office. Williamson pulled the dusty Ryzen file, reviewing Hammonds' own criminal history and looking for prior associations. Within hours, they secured priority access to Hammonds and sat down for an interview at the prison. Ricky sounded agitated, his voice tight with fear. He explained that on March 26, 1993, a 14-year-old version of himself, shaking with fear, snuck into his parents' barn to smoke a joint hidden in the rafters. He watched a silver Buick belonging to his sister Jennifer's boyfriend Eric back into the barn. Two figures emerged, Eric and his friend Jason Tibbs. Ricky overheard them arguing. Eric's voice was tense. "What the hell happened?" They opened the trunk. Inside, partially covered by a dark jacket, lay a girl. Motionless and pale, Ricky didn't recognize her. Then Jason spoke. "I know what to do with her." They closed the trunk, got back in the car, and drove away. "Did you see who was driving, Eric?" Williamson asked. "Yes," said Ricky, frozen in terror, his secret harbored for 15 years. Airy and Williamson compared Hammond's description of the barn and the car against archived crime scene photos to check details only an eyewitness could know. With Ricky Hammonds' testimony, the detectives launched a multi-state search for Eric Freeman. They called in federal marshals and tapped into interstate databases. Federal Marshal Sarah Vance, helping with the query, flagged Eric Freeman's known alias in a recent traffic infraction in South Carolina. Detectives immediately headed south. When they knocked on Eric Freeman's suburban home, he opened the door, his face visibly paling at the mention of Reina's name. His hand instinctively gripped the doorframe. "I have nothing to say," he uttered curtly and slammed the door. Williamson exchanged a grim look with Airy. Eric's reaction had said it all. He had looked so guilty that his involvement was confirmed. But the testimony of Ricky, as convincing as it sounded, came from a convicted criminal and was not good enough to arrest anyone. Without collaboration, the detectives were at a standstill. Eric's direct involvement, however, suggested a path to a full confession, but granting immunity to an accessory to murder was no small legal hurdle. Chief Prosecutor Elaine Norris immediately flagged the risk. "We cannot offer a deal for an accessory based solely on a killer's testimony," she stated firmly. What ensued was a 5-year deadlock. More than a dozen times, Williamson and Airy made their presentation, enumerating possible charges against Eric if he did not cooperate. They provided legal precedents and emphasized how crucial breaking the 20-year deadlock was. Meanwhile, they dug deeper into Jason Tibbs' background in a search for independent corroboration. Retired Detective Ken Riley, an old mentor to Williamson, remembered the minor assault charge against Jason Tibbs involving strangulation that was dismissed years before due to witness intimidation. This history established a disturbing pattern of violence, strengthening the argument that Eric's fear of Jason was real and his testimony invaluable. The turning point finally came in 2013 when a new state law addressed cold case immunity for accomplices providing otherwise unobtainable testimony. This legislative change gave Chief Prosecutor Norris the legal leverage she needed to approve the deal. 20 years after Reina's murder, in July 2013, Eric Freeman met his attorney in a neutral office to go over the immunity agreement clause by clause. Then, with guilt and fear spilling from his voice, punctuated by long, shuddering breaths, he unburdened himself of 2 decades of torment. On the afternoon of March 26, 1993, Jason called Eric to demand a ride to the clinic so he could talk to Reina. Eric, unknowing of Jason's sinister intentions, acquiesced. They drove to the clinic where Jason confronted Reina, their voices already raised in argument. Jason pleaded, cajoled, and begged her to leave Matt and be with him. Reina's refusals were firm and resolute. Not satisfied, Jason suggested they drive somewhere quieter to finish the conversation away from her workplace. Reluctantly, Reina agreed. Eventually, Eric stopped the car on Fail Road, and Jason and Reina exited. Their argument escalated behind the vehicle. Reina, finally unequivocal, told Jason she wanted nothing to do with him. Then as Eric stepped in to intervene, Jason's carefully constructed facade shattered. He punched Reina, climbed atop her, and closed his hands around her throat. "Stop! You're going to kill her!" Eric cried. Jason's eyes were cold and distant. "Too late," he replied. "If I can't have her, nobody can." The cold, calculated, formal confession by Eric filled the small interview room. Williamson marked his words with quick notes, cross-referencing much of what Eric said with what Ricky Hammonds had already observed to make sure the story was cohesive. Ari recorded the interview and asked a few clarifying questions on geographical details to confirm the story held together. Jason put Reina's body in the trunk. They drove back to Eric's girlfriend's house, where Ricky Hammonds had watched the grim confrontation from the barn rafters. They didn't linger. Jason then took Reina's car, with Eric following in his own, her body still in the trunk. Their destination, Range Road, the pond where Tracy and her father would later make the horrific discovery. At the water's edge, as Reina wouldn't sink, Jason made sure to weigh her down with logs. Later that night, Eric realized he still had Matt's Letterman jacket in his car. He called Jason, who came by to retrieve it, leaving behind one final callous act of staging the scene. Immediately after Eric's confession, Williamson obtained an arrest warrant for Jason Tibbs. He called the Ryzen family. "We have significant developments. We believe we know who killed Reina." 20 years and 5 months following Reina's disappearance, a tactical unit was dispatched to the residence of Jason Tibbs on August 23, 2013. Now aged 39, married with 2 children, he remained in the same house he had occupied all those years ago. When officers knocked, Jason answered, his face registering confusion. The lead immediately read him his rights. Jason scoffed, trying to mask his unease. "What is this about? My alibi's solid." Williamson stepped forward and held up a photo of Eric Freeman. "Your alibi isn't solid anymore," he said. "Jason, Eric Freeman told us everything." The color visibly drained from Jason's face as 20 years of secrets crashed down in an instant. The carefully constructed world Jason Tibbs had built over 2 decades suddenly imploded. He was taken into custody at the LaPorte County Sheriff's Department, led into an interview room by Detectives Williamson and Ari. Williamson set a folder between them on the table. "Jason, we know what happened on Fail Road. We know about the pond on Range Road." Eric laid out every detail. Jason settled back, eyes unyielding. "Eric's a liar. Always has been. He's just trying to save his own skin." "Eric told us about the argument," Ari interjected. "How Reina told you she wanted nothing to do with you. How you hit her. How you strangled her." Jason slammed his hand on the table. "I want a lawyer. I'm not saying another word without my lawyer present." Williamson met his gaze steadily. "Jason, you've had 20 years to tell us. 20 years. For Reina's family, a lawyer won't change what you did, or what Eric saw, or what Ricky Hammonds heard." Jason said nothing. His jaw was clenched tight. Williamson pushed his chair back with a jarring scrape, and with Ari, stood up and moved towards the door. Jason watched them go, all defiance now replaced by the flickering fear of a trapped animal. The door shut behind them with a quiet click, leaving him alone in that sterile white room, the silence weighing down with the weight of truth closing in. In the pre-trial hearing, Jason's carefully woven alibi crumbled. Jamie, a teacher now, took the stand. Her voice was clear as she explained how Jason coerced them into lying. Her sister Misty corroborated the statement, with Chad, Jason's fox-hunting accomplice, claiming Jason had asked him to lie out of fear. The other participants, middle-aged at this point, also spoke to only hearing Jason's voice over the radio and never having seen him. Jason sat at the defense table, panic flickering across his face as his web of deceit unraveled. Jason Tibbs' trial finally began on November 7, 2014. The Ottawa County Courthouse was filled to capacity with media and spectators anxious to see the resolution of this years-old mystery. Chief Prosecutor Elaine Norris had headed the prosecution, introducing Eric Freeman's and Ricky Hammonds's testimonies, a clear chain of events. She used visual aids to reconstruct the timeline and recontextualize the old physical evidence. Reina's staged car, the discarded Letterman jacket, in light of the confessions. Defense attorney Richard Vance made a last-ditch motion to introduce Ray McCarthy's past into the proceedings. Judge Patricia Chen quickly denied it. There is no direct link between Mr. McCarthy's past and the current charges. She said extraneous character assassination will not be allowed. Jason kept stoic, at times whispering to his attorney, offering no outbursts. Following 5 hours of deliberation, the jury returned with its verdict. Silence filled the courtroom. The foreman announced, "Guilty." A collective gasp, then quiet sobs from the Ryzen family. Ben and Karen clutched each other, tears of relief and sorrow finally flowing after 21 agonizing years. On December 19th, Jason Tibbs was sentenced to 40 years in prison, with a minimum of 20 before being eligible for parole in 2034. Karen Ryerson's voice was steady, heavy with decades of pain during the victim impact statements. Reina was so full of life. She wanted to heal animals. To make the world better, Jason Tibbs stole that. He stole her future. He stole our peace. Jason's lawyer filed numerous appeals, citing hidden agreements, forced confessions, and tampering with evidence. Even motions to admit trace fibers in McCarthy's car, discovered in Reina's hair, were denied. On July 30th, 2019, all appeals were dismissed, upholding that the agreement of immunity with Eric Freeman was appropriate, and the evidence against Tibbs was overwhelming. The man who had consumed Reina with a twisted obsession would now spend his life consumed by the shadows of a prison cell. Ray McCarthy, once the feared red herring, died in his jail cell in February 2018 at age 52 during routine rounds while incarcerated for an unrelated parole violation. He later became the subject of a wrongful death lawsuit alleging he had been denied necessary medications. Just another layer of complex tragedy. Justice, though agonizingly delayed, had finally arrived for Reina Ryzen. The Ryzen family could grieve with a clearer truth established. They created the Reina Ryzen Memorial Scholarship Fund, awarded annually to a band student. A living tribute to the music she might have made and the life she might have lived. LaPorte, once immune to the harsh realities outside its borders, would never be the same. Dr. Evelyn Reed, a local historian, said, "Doors here aren't unlocked anymore. Reina Ryzen's story taught us that evil can be anywhere, and vigilance is part of our identity now." Reina's story, a tragedy born of obsession and betrayal, became a somber lesson, a permanent whisper of the darkness that can lurk beneath the surface of a seemingly perfect life. Sustained by a loving family and a community forever altered, her memory now serves as a testament to perseverance and the quiet courage of those who refuse to let darkness win. In the archives of a small Indiana town, the file on the young woman who wanted to be a veterinarian could finally, truly be closed.